Good evening. Welcome to my channel. I have a little bonus piece for you today. I'm going to read you an extract from my new book, which is called Run for the Hell of It. 50 running adventures from 5k to 100 miles. So this is just out on, and you can get it on Amazon. I may arrange for it to be distributed to some bookshops if I can, but at the moment I'm afraid it's more money to Mr. Bezos, but in a good cause, I feel. Anyway, so basically, yeah, this is a book I wrote in lockdown, about 50 different running adventures I had in my 50th year, and they range from running my first park run to running a 100-mile ultramarathon. And I'm going to read you an extract today that sort of sits somewhere in the middle of that kind of adventure. And this piece is called Chasing Sean, and it's run number 22 in the book. I'm stumbling along the grassy verge of a pavement-free A road somewhere between Brecon and Merthyr Tydfil, having run and walked over 30 miles in the North Wales hills. I'm on the verge of weeping with frustration. My feet ache, and I've been on them for almost 11 hours. Once again, a Boyter mishap has transformed a glorious day's running into a traumatic misadventure. This particular tale of running angst and epiphany began much more auspiciously 36 hours earlier. Having discovered that one of my running heroes, Sean Conway, who very kindly contributed cover blurbs for both my previous running books, is engaged in a project running a marathon in each of the national parks for 15 consecutive days, I decided a day or so after Norfolk that it might be fun to join him on one such run. Sean is, for the first time, inviting people to join him on his leisurely marathons in locations ranging from the Cairngorms to Cornwall to Snowdonia. And I realised that I can combine taking Roxy to see a Mazda Bongo expert to address the weird headlamp issue with a trip to Wales and then Edinburgh. I set off on my mini road trip on June the 16th in glorious spring sunshine. Jerry at Discount Trucks and his mechanic swap out the rare Japanese import headlamp bulbs and replace them with much more affordable and available alternatives. They do a quick service and tweak a couple of other things, 20 psi in the rear left tyre when it ought to be 34. Oops. And I drive to a nearby MOT garage for Roxy's second and final inspection. She passes with minor advisories, and I head straight to Wales, arriving on an idyllic and warm evening in the Brecon Beacons, just north of Merthyr. I know where Sean is likely to be holed up in preparation for tomorrow's assault on the Welsh mountains, since he's helpfully provided participants with maps of his intended route and start location. I'm a fairly shy person, and I'm afraid to meet new people, particularly comparative celebrities like Sean, so I decide to minimise contact, as well as give Sean his peace and quiet, by eschewing the car park he suggested for tonight's sleepover. I drive up a neighbouring valley to an equally remote car park at the edge of a small forest. There are 3 unattended vehicles there, apart from my own, but more importantly, there are 2 mostly functional portaloos, which is a massive relief. I don't feel quite up to digging out the toilet trowel this evening. I make a simple meal of pasta, tomato sauce with chilli and additional pomodoro tomatoes and wolf it down, stocking up the calories for what I suspect will be a challenging day's running tomorrow. By the time I head for bed, the 3 vehicles have abandoned the car park, and I'm alone with a gently rippling stream, birdsong, an amber sunset, and solitude. The following morning, I rise at 6 a.m, in plenty of time to have a leisurely breakfast and amble along to meet Sean Conway and whatever other supporters he's gathered for his Brecon Beacons run today. I'm supposed to be there by 8 a.m. Everything would have gone swimmingly had I not driven in entirely the wrong direction to get to the appropriate car park and start point of the marathon. When I finally realised my error, having found a place where it's possible to get phone reception, I'm miles away from where I'm supposed to be, a distance estimated by Google to take 16 minutes to drive. My phone informs me that it's 7:52. Inevitably, when I do arrive at the right location, I've missed the others. Sean's famous yellow Land Rover is there, draped with towels and drying running gear as if it weren't already sufficiently recognisable from previous adventures. However, the man himself is nowhere to be seen. It's 8:12 a.m. and unfortunately, I did not download a map of the route onto my phone. With no idea which way the group have gone, I can only guess. Half an hour later, I've changed my mind and running direction 3 times, and I'm trotting uphill towards peaks I cannot identify. One of them must be Penny Fan, which I know is the first landmark on Sean's planned route, but these hills might equally be anything else. I need a plan B, and fast. I drive down into the valley to pick up reception, download the route from Sean's website, and realise that I can head for a car park on the other side of Pennyfan and probably get there in time to intercept the group when they're about 6 miles into their run. Amazingly, this plan works. It takes me 20 minutes to drive down one scenic valley and locate the Pont Ardaf car park, and just 5 minutes after I arrive, in glorious sunlight, various fit-looking runners in lycra with running packs and shades descend the rocky path I'm watching. I ask one bloke if he's running with Sean Conway, and he confirms that he is. Moments later, Sean himself appears, ambling along and looking wholly unlike a man who's just run a dozen consecutive marathons in as many days. Sean is instantly recognisable with his large orange beard, wide-brimmed hat with neck protector and slim-fitting plaid shirt, sleeves rolled up. Apart from his running shoes, he's clearly not a man who shops obsessively at Runner's Need. "Hi Sean, it's Gavin. You reviewed my book." He smiles in greeting, but I sense he doesn't twig who I am, and why should he? Plus, with another 20 miles ahead of him, in at best undulating terrain, he has other things on his mind, such as gathering his group and finding the next part of the trail, which will follow the Taff Way on the other side of the main road, the A470. Sean's gang are a score or more of fellow runners, most but not all of them local, whose age ranges from late teens to mid-40s. I'm probably the grandad of the group, a fact I appreciate when I later talk to one of the 3 women amongst us, who turns out to be a 19-year-old student. Several of the group are evidently old friends of Sean, and a handful are fellow adventurers. I later discover one of their number is none other than Kenton Cool, the British mountaineer who led Sir Ranulph Fiennes' 2008 and 2009 expeditions, and who has summited Everest an astonishing 15 times. Other Team Sean members include more modest running enthusiasts, and as we weave our way up a marshy slope and along the side of a hill following a tiny path, I talk to a few of them. If I'm honest, most of what was said has already faded into the mists of time, but what remains is a sense of rediscovering the joy of meeting new people, chatting freely without masks, and sharing the pleasures of the great outdoors. It's a scintillatingly bright day, and I've smeared on sunscreen, although I later realise I've managed to leave the bottle in Roxy. I stop to take pictures, and in fact we all stop from time to time to pause for a walking section. In my eagerness to race on through the Welsh hills, I must remind myself that everyone here has just run over a mountain. Well, they call themselves mountains here. To a Scot, they're hills, and to Kenton, mere pimples. This is going to be a very laid-back marathon, primarily because Sean is not going to be running especially fast with a dozen marathons in his legs, and he's the only one who really knows the route. This suits me down to the ground, and although my legs feel fine, I must also remember that I ran 35 miles myself just 3 days ago. I decide to enjoy the social aspect of this run, revel in the glorious scenery and not worry about timings or pace. I do feel surprisingly light on my feet, and the trails are relatively easy to follow. We head along a verdant valley with small clumps of forest and the occasional reservoir, then ascend forestry paths to a high farm. For some reason I decide to join 2 of the front runners in a dash up a 15-degree slope. I have no idea what I'm trying to prove, but I'm grateful that my much younger fellow runners decide to wait at the farm at the top for the rest of the group to catch up. Soon I make 2 pleasingly serendipitous discoveries about the gang I'm with. Lee is a cheerful and positive soul, and one of the more determined runners who, it transpires, has also read my first book, Downhill From Here. He's actually the first complete stranger I've encountered who's read my work, and this probably thrills me more than it ought to. The second coincidence concerns one of the young women, the blonder of 2 sisters. I failed to catch her name, but it transpires she's studying at Edinburgh University, my alma mater. Stays in student digs in the same street I lived in 30 years ago, and even knows obscure parts of the Pentlands where I've frequently run over the years. It's strange but pleasant to be here in the Brecon Beacons talking with a Gen Z stranger about swimming in Benally Reservoir, hundreds of miles away on the outskirts of Edinburgh. I have a rather embarrassing moment when I mistake another red-bearded runner for Sean a little later, but make up for it by running with the man himself in Kenton for a while. I learn that the latter is used to running only 5k and 10k distances, and is completing today's marathon having shattered both ankles in a climbing accident several years prior, and having been informed he might never be able to walk properly again. When I learn about his Everest accomplishment later from Lee, Kenton being incredibly modest, his bloody-minded determination to complete the distance hobbling in evident agony makes sense. We reach a little dogleg section under a major road and then head through a glorious wooded bit. I borrow additional sunscreen and slurp my water down. It's getting properly hot now. We reach a wooden bridge over a river which offers the intrepid a 20-foot drop into a deep ultramarine pool of cool water. Some of us are tempted, but nobody is daft enough to accept the invitation. There's a brief rest stop near Merthyr Tydfil where we stock up on nibbles, soft drinks and many bottles of water from a local shop, whose owner is amused and delighted to have such an avid and thirsty clientele. Then 10 minutes later we're back on the Taff Way, having completed around 15 miles, me, and 21 miles, everyone else. The route back to the start point on this epic loop is largely along a repurposed old railway path. Despite the comparatively long distance we've travelled, most of us are doing rather well. I'm aware that when we reach the car park I'll still have to climb Penny Fen to get back to Roxy, so I don't push myself too hard. Halfway home we stop to let Sean and Kenton catch us, and I refresh myself up by splashing water from a spring over my face and neck. It's definitely the hottest day I've run so far in 2021. After not too long we join a sinuous B-road and I begin to recognise some of the landmarks I drove past this morning. Suddenly there's Sean's Land Rover parked up ahead and I have the odd sensation of finishing a long run while still mentally prepared to continue. However, it's also true that the group run may be finished, but I am not. Sean improvised this route, and it transpires he's about a mile short of his 26.2 mile goal for today. Remarkably, almost everyone who has completed the 25 miles comes to the same conclusion, so they all add extra bits of running to make up the total. I wait for Sean and Kenton to arrive a little later, planning to join them as they make up the distance, fortunately in the direction of Penny Fen. Lee helps me out by taking a photograph of Sean and I before we set off, since my phone's battery has died, as has the spare power pack I bought. This is what comes of measuring an all-day run on Strava, whilst taking high-resolution photos and checking the route on Google Maps. Even a device as sophisticated as an iPhone can't cope with my demands. When Sean and his friend decide to turn back, Kenton is hobbling in evident discomfort, but he's still smiling, still irrepressible. I take my leave of my companions, wishing them both well. Tomorrow Sean will head to the Pembrokeshire coast with Snowdonia in 2 days' time to complete his adventure. Earlier I asked him which of the national park marathons was his favourite, and he replied with all sincerity, "Whichever one I'm running is my favourite." It's great to have him and others like him as advocates, however bonkers, of Britain's phenomenal natural resources. Now I'm on my own and it's almost 4 p.m. That's fine, I shouldn't need more than 2 hours to ascend and descend a Welsh hill, should I? I locate the trailhead and run towards the unmistakable craggy prow of Penny Fen. I pass 2 hikers who set me on the correct trail and then an elderly hiker who suggests I run down into the valley. For some reason I don't take this route, preferring to aim for the neighbouring hill instead. I'm imagining ridge running between them perhaps. This is my first bit of bad guesswork. My legs, rested from their 20-minute wait at the car park, are astonishingly nimble as I skip up the rocky path towards the sun-baked green hill ahead of me. I pass a few hikers and nod hello. I appear to be in very little pain. There are lessons to be learned here, I suspect. Pacing myself has meant I can run almost the whole way to the top of the jagged staircase of slates some enterprising engineers have forced into the clay-rich soil. I'm now standing at the edge of a steep scalloped ridge with a 100-foot drop to my right as I make my way towards the far end, hoping for a path down and up again to Penny Fen. I reckon I'll only have to descend and climb a couple of 100 metres. I can't take photos now, which pains me somehow as the views are breathtaking, extending for dozens, perhaps hundreds of miles across the Brecon Beacons and beyond. In the end, having found nothing more promising, I picked my way down a narrow sheep path, dodging accretions of excrement and scaring the ruminants. 10 minutes later, I've joined the low valley trail I should probably have taken all along, and I'm ascending Penny Fen. It soon becomes so steep that I have no choice but to walk, pushing myself uphill, fell runner style, my hands augmenting my thighs. For the first time on this run, I feel a hint of exhaustion. At the top of Penny Fen there are more excellent vistas, but none of them contain an evident car park with Roxy's solar panel gleaming up at me. I take a stab at a guess. Selecting a well-trodden trail, a lone hiker is walking up. The descent takes in beautiful valleys of low, flowering trees, their branches gnarled and bent by inclement weather. I run past a group of young men heading uphill, who ask me how long it will take to the summit. I guess and tell them 40 minutes, then realise once I'm 50 yards beyond them that it's probably at least double that. I have no idea how long anything is taking, having forgotten once again that I own a running watch which I've left in the van. Turning a corner onto an unfamiliar slope of green fields and hedgerows, I realise I'm lost. Fortunately, in the small car park beyond, where the lads I passed earlier must have parked, there's a map of the beacons. I realise I am at least 12 miles away from where I ought to be. There's nobody about, however, and I miss my one chance at a lift, letting a car pass me without reacting. I also feel morally obliged to get myself out of trouble and not involve any strangers. I change my mind when, almost an hour later, I reach houses and shops, and a local informs me that I'm on the outskirts of Brecon. Entirely the wrong Welsh village, in other words. I locate the A470, knowing Roxy's parked somewhere along it, and head southwest. Although buses pass me on this bustling main road, I see no stops until I reach Libanus, 4 miles further, by which time I've missed the last bus of the day. It's almost 7 p.m. at this point. There are very few people out and about in the village, and the pavement, predictably, runs out just a little beyond the last house. I'm rather glad I saw industrial verge cutters at work the previous day, since this at least gives me a good 18 inches of stubbly straw to run along as trucks roar past at 70 miles an hour. I stop at a lay-by and stick my thumb out when it becomes clear that nothing on this road is going to resemble the place where Roxy is parked. The hills to my left are wrongly shaped and far too far away. I'm probably 8 miles distant still. Sadly, nobody stops for a dehydrated, sunburnt, stumbling middle-aged Scotsman in a dust-stained lycra. Needless to say, my water has run out. Half an hour later, I reach a vehicular rest stop and spot a small hatchback parked behind a truck, its owner in the middle of a cigarette and a phone call. I'll ask him to look at a map on his phone to find out if I still have far to walk. If it's more than a mile, I'll then ask for a lift. In the end, Steve, who seems amiable enough, offers me a lift, impressed by the ordeal I've just put myself through. With vast gratitude almost making me weep with joy, I get into his car. Fortunately, Steve is not a murderer, and does as he said he would, dropping me off at the familiar car park where Roxy is sitting, gleaming like a silver palace in evening sunlight. Bless him, Steve even waits until I've found my keys before driving off. It's been an eventful day, an idyll bookended by near calamity. In other words, just what I expected and hoped for from my Brecon Beacons trail running adventure. And there's a photo of me and Sean. And that was 32 miles I ran that day in 9 hours and 4 minutes. Not particularly impressive pace, 5.3 miles an hour. And I gave that a difficulty rating of 6 out of 10 because most of the run was fine, just lasted way too long. So anyway, that's one of the adventures or misadventures in Run for the Hell of It. So if that kind of thing's your cup of tea, there are 49 more stories in here. And you can get this on Amazon. If you've got Kindle Unlimited, it's free. And on Kindle, I think it's only $4.99. So there you go. Available now.